Here, joining me now to discuss, former NASA astronaut and commander of the International Space Station, Leroy Chiao. Good morning, Commander. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Pleasure.
You flew on 3 space shuttle missions. You spent more than 6 months in space on the ISS. Why is it so important for American astronauts to get back to the moon?
The space program, especially human spaceflight program, exists primarily for 2 reasons. One is national prestige, and 2 is to inspire the next generation to be interested in science and technology. And so for us to have gone to the moon all these decades ago and then not have been back, now it's seen as kind of another challenge to our superiority if somebody else makes it back there with humans before we do. So I don't think it's critical that we beat any other nations back to the moon with humans, but we are the ones who were first decades ago, and we will get back there, and hopefully sooner rather than later.
So let's talk about the Artemis 2 mission. That could launch as early as next month. It won't land on the lunar surface, but it will instead circle the lunar surface. This is a crew of 4 American astronauts, closer to the moon than we've ever been in decades, they say. What are those astronauts, Commander, looking at? This is a recon mission, reconnaissance mission. So what are they looking for, and what are they reporting back?
Right. Actually, just to clarify quickly, it's 3 Americans and 1 Canadian will be not orbiting, they will loop around the moon. So technically, they're not even going to circularize and orbit around the moon like Apollo 8 did in 1968. But this is a new vehicle, and they're going to be testing all its systems, a thermal control system, life control system, and just a small interesting piece. They're going to be going farther away from the Earth than any other astronauts in history so far.
Wow.
That is, their loop around the moon is going to take them farther away from the Earth and the moon than the Apollo missions did. So this is an exciting step, an exciting first step. It's in a very loose way, analogous to Apollo 8 going and orbiting the moon before we go and land. Mm-hmm. So we'll all be watching very closely. First time since 1972 any humans have been in that vicinity.
So basically the same technology would be used to potentially land on the moon. So this is kind of a test flight of sorts.
Right. Well, you know, the issue about landing back on the moon is we don't have a lander yet. And of course, SpaceX is working on its Starship program, and we have a lander. NASA has contracted with them to build a lander based on that Starship technology. Blue Origin also has a contract to develop a lander. And so that's really what we call the long pole, the challenge of can we get a lander built and certified in time to land by the very aggressive schedule of 2028. Now, the one piece that gives me confidence that we might be able to do it is Jared Isaacman, the new NASA administrator. The NASA of old, I would say there's no way we'd do it in 2 years, 2.5 years. But, you know, with a new administrator, he's in there to shake things up. And so we'll see what happens.
Well, I am curious because in the beginning you said, you know, there are 2 reasons you go back: advance the technology and space dominance. The president is calling on NASA to get astronauts back to the moon because, you know, in his terms, he's deeply concerned, his words, that we are being outpaced in space by the Chinese. Do you agree with that?
Well, we are still the world's leaders in human spaceflight. Just look at the ISS. We make operations look like they're routine. And in a way they are, but, you know, all the experience behind that speaks for itself. China has steadily risen as a power in human spaceflight. You know, they've got their own space station. A lot of people may not even be aware of that. They routinely operate it, send crews back and forth. They do spacewalks. They're quickly, or I should say steadily gaining in capability. Their space station's much smaller than the ISS, but it's actually a good size, and they have made it no secret that they intend to land their own astronauts on the moon somewhere in the 2030 timeframe.
The race is on. Former NASA astronaut Leroy Chiao, thanks so much for your time. Great conversation. Good to have you on.